Welcome back. If you're noticing, I am wearing the same thing as the previous video and done up the same way because I did the unthinkable and I pre-filmed. I did it! I needed a break, you guys. I needed one day where I did not have to film and upload and edit and all this mess. I just needed one day where I was just gonna have relaxation. But I did take a break in between films and got more yummy apple cider with a dash of honey in my Sam mug. I cannot get over this mug. I can't. It's so awesome. But per yesterday's video, I hinted that we were going to dive into some very creepy little children's stories. And in essence, that's kind of what we're about to do. So I'm going to be looking a lot over here a little bit because there are so many notes to read about these different cases. I feel like I'm outside right now. Apparently birds are trying to get into my house. Anyway, so if you've ever watched some of my previous videos, I probably have mentioned the fact that little children, whether it's in a horror movie, we're talking about demonically possessed kids, ghost kids, real life kids, psychopath kids, they all freak the hell out of me. Anything to do with kids in a creepy kind of way freaks me out so bad. Like so bad. It gives me nightmares. No. I would rather face down a werewolf than have some kind of little creepy crawly kid coming at me. It's just, no. No. But today we're going to be talking about 4 cases that involve technically 5 in total, of the most evil real life kids throughout history. Now, there are plenty of cases of kids going completely insane and killing their parents and all sorts of stuff like that. But these 4 cases that I'm about to talk about are especially brutal. So let's sit back and, try to relax. I'm not sure how you can relax with a topic like this, but okay, here we go. So the first case we're going to talk about is that of John Venables and Robert Thompson. Now, these were 2 10-year-old boys. 10 years old. I can't even remember what I was doing at age 10, but it sure as shit was not killing people. I don't think. So, at the ripe old age of 10 years old, these boys were getting into a lot of mischief. And the case that I am about to tell you about started one afternoon when these 2 boys decided they were going to visit a local shopping center in England, I believe, is where this took place. And they were going to start stealing from the shopping center, stealing here and there. Don't get me wrong. I had friends in high school and middle school and even grade school that liked to steal things. They just liked to get into trouble. I'm sure a lot of kids did that. I've stolen things when I was younger because I just didn't want to understand that I couldn't have something that I wanted. Obviously, those days are behind me now. But anyway, they were getting into a lot of mischief. But suddenly, I don't know what happened. I don't know what has to happen in someone's brain to go from, oh, let's go and steal some stuff, to let's abduct and kill this little kid. But that's what happened. So these 2 boys were actually caught on the cameras that were in the shopping center, basically abducting this 2-year-old little boy whose name was James Bulger. I hope I'm not butchering that. This little boy was 2 years old, and all this took place in 1993, so it's not like that horrendously long ago. These 10-year-old boys abducted this 2-year-old boy and took him away from the shopping center out towards the train tracks. Along the way, they would stop and mutilate this little boy, torture him, and then kill him. Now, they didn't go into much detail in the articles that I was reading about how they killed him, but all they said was that there was some mutilation, and obviously they had murdered the boy and left his body just lying on the train tracks. Of course, these kids were caught using the shopping center surveillance, and they actually, I want to say, did they plead guilty? No, they were found guilty. They were found guilty of the murder, but honestly, I have no idea what happened to them after that. I looked through several different articles and couldn't find an actual conviction of, was it first-degree murder? Are they spending their lives in jail? Were they released as an adult? I don't really know what happened to them. So if you guys know, please comment that down below because I want to know how this story ended. Case number 2 is that of Joshua Phillips. Phillips was only 14 years old when he decided it would be a great idea to beat and stab to death his neighbor's 8-year-old daughter. Apparently, he stabbed her body 11 times, then took her body and hid it under his bed in the home. This occurred back in 1998, so this is actually even more recent than the first case. Now, eventually, of course, his mother discovered the body and called the police. Yay, Mom, because I know some mothers that would actually sit there and cover it up. That's how demented they are. But thankfully, she did call the police, and unfortunately, it was very true that her son was a complete psychopath, and he was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. The third case we're going to talk about today is a little bit longer in detail, and it's honestly the most disturbing of the day. I know I probably should have saved this to last, but whatever. This case involves Jesse Pomeroy. Now, this case is way old. Don't ask me the year because I was supposed to write it down and I didn't because I am an asshole and I forget to write things down. But this one, I remember correctly, it was either in the 1800s or it was in the very, very early 1900s. I don't really remember. Again, if you know that or if you look it up for me, post that down below in the comments. Now, Jesse Pomeroy started out at the ripe old age of 11 with his murders. And they would last until he was 14 before they finally put a stopper. So when he was 11 years old, he started literally luring young boys. Don't really know exact ages, but there were about 7 different cases of him luring young boys into the woods or into these, isolated places and sexually torturing them. They didn't go into a whole lot of detail, which I'm kind of glad for, to be honest, about what exactly that means, but he would sexually torture them and then murder them. Now, for these 7 different murders, which some of them may not have actually ended in murder, but he did torture 7 different boys in one way or another. He was sent to reform school, and that's it. And I'm not entirely sure how long he was sent to reform school. But anyway, he did get out, I want to say around the age of 13 or 14. After he got out, he went back home and started helping his mother with her shop. She had apparently a little shop. And that is when his next murder took place, which would actually not be discovered until after his final murder. But a 10-year-old girl made the horrible choice to go into his mother's shop on the day that his mother was not in there, and it was just Jesse. So he mutilated and murdered her and either buried or just plopped her body down in his mother's cellar. I'm assuming he buried her in the cellar because his mother didn't find the body for a good long while. The last murder that I read about with Jesse Pomeroy was when he would kidnap a 4-year-old boy, take him to the local swamp, and then cut and slash this little boy to death, practically to pieces. The report said that the slashes were so bad, this kid was practically decapitated. 4 years old. 4 years old. And it's so twisted because sometimes we expect things like the most heinous crimes in the world can only possibly be committed by an adult, right? But then you hear about this little 14-year-old boy who's doing this to a 4-year-old boy, and it's just kind of like, I don't know how to feel. Like I'm feeling disgust and anger and revulsion at the 14-year-old boy, but at the same time, it is so insane to me that a 14-year-old boy could do this, Which goes back into the creep factor with kids, because kids are supposed to be innocent, they're supposed to be full of joy, and which I know there are plenty of kids out there that have really shit childhoods, so they're not full of joy, but even the ones that have shit childhoods usually don't end up as serial killers. Now, like I said, the mutilated girl's corpse would later be found in his mother's cellar. The police would interrogate him about it, and the little shit apparently had a very cocky attitude about it and owned up to the murders and apparently was proud of them. Psychopath. Now, just like the Rod Ferrell thing that I was talking about yesterday, Jesse Pomeroy was originally put on death row. Like, if an adult had done this, immediate death row. Come on now. They put him on death row, and apparently there was this huge public outcry about no child should ever be put to death, yada, yada, yada. So they reduced his sentence to only 40 years in solitary confinement. I'm sorry, but you could have still kept him his whole life. I would have been fine with that. I'm just saying. But yeah, again, any more information on that case, post it. And the last case we're going to talk about today involves a girl, because we can't just say it's all boys, right? Like, yeah, boys tend to be a little more psychopathic than girls, but let's bring in Miss Mary Bell. Now this case occurred in 1968, because I actually wrote it down, when Mary Bell was only 11 years old. According to the articles that I was reading, her first murder was that of a 4-year-old neighbor boy, who she apparently strangled in the woods outside of their home. She would go on later to enlist a friend's help, and her friend's name was Norma Bell, but supposedly there was no relation. They weren't related. It was just they so happened to have the same last name. And these two girls would kidnap a 3-year-old boy, mutilate this boy by carving an M on his stomach, and supposedly taking scissors and chopping off bits and pieces of the boy, including some parts of his genitals. And the two would be caught later on. I don't know if they confessed about it, but both girls were caught and they were charged with manslaughter. But Mary was released in 1980. And after that, I couldn't find any more information about Mary. Maybe she changed her name. Maybe she went back to prison for something else. I don't really know. So if you guys know, again, post it down below. So I only stopped at 4 cases because the more I kept reading about these evil children, the more creeped out, freaked out, and just, I was getting. Like, I know I'm going to have a nightmare tonight about just evil psychopath children, which is just, yay. That's always lovely. So other than that, you guys, that is it for today. I'm about to go edit these videos and get them posted and hopefully finish this apple cider if it ever cools off. So yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow with a new video. And yes, if you are enjoying these videos, be sure to smash that like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, what you doing? What you doing, friend? Smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm really hyper right now because I've already had like 1 cup of cider. No, there wasn't any alcohol in it. But now that I think back on it, there should have been. Bye, guys.